and welcome to Myth Monsters. My name is Erin and I'll be your host for these little snack bite-sized podcasts on folklore and mythical monsters from around the world. These podcasts focus on the actual cryptids, folklore and mythic monsters from global mythology, rather than focusing on the full stories of heroes and their big adventures. I'll also be dropping in some references that they have to recent culture and where you can see these represented in modern day content so that you can learn more and get as obsessed as I am about these absolute legends of the mythological world. This is totally my bad, but we're going from one vampire to another, apparently. This is bad planning from me, and I apologise. I'm usually quite good at this, but hey, we all love a vampire, don't we? This week, we're heading back over to the beautiful Philippines for a monstrous baby and looking at the horrifying Tiyanak. I learnt about this monster through a listener, and she wasn't recommending this, but actually she asked me not to cover this monster while she was pregnant. I absolutely understand, and this episode was made a year after that, so thank you, Maria, for telling me about this one. I hope that I've respected your wishes enough, and I hope your little one is doing well. Obviously, based off of this, there is a bit of a content warning on this episode. There will be themes of child loss, child abuse, child death, and abortion involved in this one. If these topics affect you or upset you, maybe give this one a miss and join us next time instead. Content warning over, we're moving on. So what is the Tiyanak? They are typically described as a vampiric creature that disguises itself as a baby or toddler in order to find victims. In appearance, beneath the surface, they usually have goblin-like features, with small bald heads, sharp teeth, pointed ears, bloodshot eyes, and disproportionate legs to each other. They are able to put on a disguise of a human baby, and shed this like a snake when approached to reveal their true form. They're often called goblins, imps, or demons, and I'm aware that most of those are other mythical monsters, but they are usually vampiric in nature, mauling and biting their victims to drink their blood and kill. They are, though, formed from the bodies of dead children, and their main targets are pregnant women. They attack the abdominal area of women, eating their reproductive organs and viscera to fulfill their need for a womb. Men do also get attacked, but often to a lesser extent, and are usually only attacked if they stand in the way of the real target. Tiyanak are formed after a baby has been left to die in the woods because they are unwanted or neglected, but they can arise from aborted babies too. Their souls are then corrupted and turned into Tiyanaks, destined to stay in the woods to feast on women. Destroying the body after death doesn't seem to stop that transformation. However, there are some tellings where you can dissolve the corpse in sulfuric acid, which does stop it. Sorry, this is kind of gross if you have an easier to turn stomach as well. For their powers, they obviously have this transformation-based power, but they are also able to climb walls, and in some tellings are able to sprout extra limbs from their abdomen. They also obviously eat human flesh and drink blood too. So it's kind of a power in the sense that they have teeth sharp enough to do this and the strength in order to do so. They are also extremely agile and fast, as well as very good at slipping away from danger. There are some tellings that indicate that they can also fly, but they are a bit few and far between, so I'll leave that up to you if you want to add that to their roster of powers. You can find the Tiyanak in the wooded areas of the Philippines, crying out and waiting for a kind soul to come and find them, only for them to attack once they've got you close enough to reveal their evil presence underneath the baby disguise. You could stop them from attacking you though, as there are some countermeasures. You could break the enchantment pulling you towards the cry by turning your clothes inside out, as the demon just finds this hilarious that you would embarrass yourself this way, and let you go about your day and retreat. You could also free the spirit by giving it a name and bringing it a white candle, which would guide its spirit into the afterlife, which its neglectful parents failed to do. As well as that, anything that could be used to repel aswang, which is the umbrella term for anything vampiric in Philippine folklore, could be used, such as garlic and rosemary. Lastly, you were generally safe on days such as New Year's Eve, because the noise from the fireworks would scare them off. So you could also just bring a really big noisemaker. Now, moving on to etymology, the word Tiyanak comes from a Malay word, but a Tagalog translation of it. It comes from Tiyanak, which is a whole other monster in Malay mythology, and the Tagalog translation for this is dead child. I'll talk about the Tiyanak later on in this episode, and I'll cover it properly on its own another time. For this one's history, we actually have a super interesting backstory. If you weren't aware and haven't listened to any of the other Filipino monsters that I've covered, the Philippines were invaded by the Spanish in 1565, and their culture was considered almost tribal, and was quashed to be replaced with the Spanish. Prior to this, the Tiyanak was actually seen as a spirit of the forest, rather than being associated with babies or the death of babies in such a horrible way. They were originally considered Pontianak, this other Malay monster that I mentioned earlier, and these were the supposed demon mothers of Tiyanak. And before the Spanish turned up, it was believed that Islam had started to spread north towards the Philippines, and this monster actually came with it. The myth was that the spirit was actually of a child whose mother died before giving birth, therefore was born in the ground. The Pontianak was the actual mother of that child reborn into a vengeful spirit. But what the Spanish also brought over to the Philippines was Catholicism, and this is what changed the Tiyanak myth completely. Instead of this mother monster, the baby was born and was believed to have come from specifically unbaptised children, whose souls were lost and vengeful because they were not brought into the Catholic faith before they died. This is because the Spanish Catholics, especially those from Spanish-taken Mexico, were intent on converting the locals to Catholicism, and this convinced them if their babies died and were not baptised, they would turn into Tiyanaks, changing their local beliefs fundamentally. Interestingly, why we believe it was specifically Mexican Spanish people is because they have a similar monster from Aztec mythology, the Tiyanak, and we believe it is from these local Mexican travellers because they believe that Catholicism saved them from this monster, so they could save the local Filipinos by doing the same thing to them. In the modern day Philippines, this myth is still very commonly believed in, and actually this is extended to aborted babies, who they believe have returned from death to seek revenge on those who deprive them of life. It's also said that they can't go on to the afterlife because they are not given names, so they are searching for this name before they can pass on, hence the countermeasure of giving them one and helping them pass on. I do have some extracts about the Tiyanak from missionaries from way back when, so here's one from 1738. Pregnant women could not cut their hair, for they said that the children that they would bear would have no hair. When a woman is about to give birth, some men undress until they are stark naked. Then, taking shields and katans, one takes his stand in the silong and another on the ridge of the house, and they continually fence with the wind with their katans as long as the parishan lasts. I have removed some from this performance by force of punishment. They say that it is to keep the Tiyanak and the Oswang away from the woman. These are witches among them, who come to obstruct the success of the childbirth, and to suck out the souls of children, and the people act thus in order to prevent them. He who does not wish to have this observed in public, through fear of punishment, removes his wife to another house for the partition, if he thinks that the witch is in his. And here's another from 1803. They have many other superstitions, as of that of the Tiyanak, a spirit or ideal being whose employment or amusement consists in preventing, by certain means peculiar to itself, the delivery of a woman in labour. To counteract the malignity of this spirit, the husband, fastening the door, reduces himself to a state of complete nudity, lights a fire, and arms himself with a sword, continues to flourish it furiously until the woman is delivered. Now, in terms of real life comparisons, the reality is, I imagine, back in the day, if you didn't want a child, leaving them in the woods would be something a desperate woman would do. Be that anywhere in the world, and unfortunately something we do know did happen. Look at China with the one-child policy, for instance, leaving daughters in the woods and in the wilderness to die. Childbirth and childbearing is incredibly difficult, as I'm sure many of you listening would know and agree. And in a time of less education, medicine and support, it would be something that is unfortunately inevitable. And this is folklore's way of inflicting guilt in a supernatural way. For mythical comparisons, we have mentioned two, the Tiyanak and the Pontiac, and I've talked about the Pontiac enough, and I will do an episode on this one soon so you can have the full story from Malaysia to the Philippines. But the short story is that they are a gut-eating pregnant spirit from Malay folklore that target men to enact revenge on them for their death during labour, or even getting her into that state in the first place. So the Pontiac are still those mythical mothers of these children. The Tiyanak were actually almost exactly alike to the Tiyanak. They were sometimes childlike in appearance, and they would lead their people astray, but they typically didn't kill them then and there. However, they were fully considered demons. They're actually represented both positively and negatively within Mexican folklore, but again, I will cover these another time. Lastly, we do have to think about the horrendous from Polish folklore. These unborn babies that were hastily buried stillborn or aborted were often considered vampiric and would attack pregnant women and babies under a full moon, and they are really the most like our Tiyanak. I covered them in maybe my 4th episode back in 2021, but I warn you that my older episodes do need to be remastered before you listen. Now, moving on to modern media, there is a bunch around this one, mostly from the Philippines, but I've also popped in some child vampire bits to fill this out too. For art, I would generally recommend looking at independent art this week, but there's also some really great and scary stuff from the Tresse animation and comic if you're into your modern adaptations. In movies, we have 30 Days of Night, Blood Red Sky, Tiyanak from 1953, Interview with a Vampire, Near Dark, Tiyanak from 1988, Modern Vampires, The Hamiltons, One Tanga, Abigail, Shake, Rattle and Roll 2 and 9, Labyrinth, The Little Vampire, The Hallow, Vamp, The Hole in the Ground, Impacto, Daybreakers, Tiyanaks, What We Do in the Shadows, Pan's Labyrinth, The Batman vs Dracula, Hotel Transylvania, Scary Godmother, Scooby-Doo and the Ghoul School, and Tiyanak. For TV, we have Castlevania, School for Vampires, Adventure Time, Super Ingo, Juan de la Cruz, Gravedale High, the comic strip, My Babysitter's a Vampire, Lil Horrors, The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, Vampirina, Monster High, American Horror Story, Forever Night, Interview with a Vampire, Dracula 2020 and 2013, Blade the series, The Simpsons, Super Monsters, Angel, True Blood, Being Human, Van Helsing, What We Do in the Shadows, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, The Strain and Tresse. In video games we have ones such as Hellmaster, Ragnarok Online, Pathfinder, Changeling the Lost, The Witcher, Vampire Wars, Castlevania, Skyrim, Last Half of Darkness, Quest for Glory 4, The Sims, Touhou Project, Dark Romance, Blood Oath, King's Quest II, Vampire Saga, Tsukuhime and Blaze Blue. My book recommendation this week is to kick it off with some fiction first, with The Tiyanak by Dan Wright. Check that out if you're into your fiction. And if you're more into your factual stuff like me, there's Philippine Monsters Unleashed by A.S. Mappa, or Philippine Myths, Legends and Folktales by Maximo de Ramos, who does a great collection of mythology from all over the world. I suggest him every time I do a Filipino or Asian monster. He's covered loads of them, really recommend his series. Now it's time for Do I Think They Existed? I'm torn for this one, quite honestly. Do I believe that there are vampiric babies crying out for blood in the forests? No. But do I believe that people could believe this based on their history? Absolutely. I think colonialism, especially as I come from one of the worst offending countries for this, truly destroyed and changed local culture, myths and legends in their enslaved countries, and I think it's one of the saddest things we have to deal with as humans. But in contrary to that, I think the Spanish intervention in this myth is interesting. We've gone from a monster determined to get revenge on men to a baby determined to punish any woman for their mother abandoning or aborting it. It definitely reeks of old school Catholicism, and definitely has turned something that was very pro-women to something that very literally demonised their decisions. Yes, I think leaving your baby in the woods to die is pretty abhorrent, but back in the 1500s, I imagine it was pretty commonplace, unfortunately, but this is across the world too. People still do this to this day across the world. Again, look at the Chinese one-child policy to see it happen a lot in recent years. Or even in UK news where desperate women put their babies in bins, in drains, because they don't know what to do with them. And most of the time this is young women as well. It's tragic either way. I think that the other tragedy is that people feel such a lack of support that they do this. That's what we as a species can improve on to make sure this myth doesn't continue to come true across the world. The saying is it takes a village, and the village is gone. We need to remake the village as they had in these other times. But away from modern politics, I wouldn't appreciate helping a baby crying in the woods by ripping out my guts, so I think I would generally move away from that if I ever heard it in the future. It's kind of giving me the willies for any wooded cries, but any forest-based culture would tell you should mind your own business in the woods anyway, so maybe heed those words. What do you think? Did the Tiyanak lay in wait for a special kind of victim in the Philippines? Let me know on social media. I'd love to know what you think about this one. What a horrific one. I certainly wouldn't want a vampiric toddler grabbing me for doing it a favour. I'd punt that baby faster than I could a football. But a great monster to cover. Thank you so much again to the lovely Maria. Next week, we're heading over to my favourite home away from home in Germany for the first time in ages, and looking at a really big monster group rather than one specifically. So grab your scythes because we're going farming for the Feldgeister next week. For now though, thank you so much for listening. It's been an absolute pleasure. If you enjoyed this podcast, please give it a rating on the service you are listening on. I've got loads of social media for questions or suggestions on what monsters to cover next, and I'd really love to hear from you. The social media handles for TikTok, YouTube and Instagram are Myth Monsters Podcast, and the Twitter is Myth Monsters Pod, and the blue sky is Myth Monsters. But all of our content can be found at mythmonsters.co.uk, and you can find us on Good Pods, Buy Me a Coffee and Patreon too, if you want to help me fund the podcast as well. Come join the fun though, share this with your pals. They might love me as much as you do. But for now, stay spooky, and I'll see you later, vibes.